You've stopped at gas stations countless times, pulled beneath that huge metal roof, filled up your tank, grabbed the receipt, and driven off without giving it a second thought. But have you ever stopped and wondered who actually built that massive structure, or why it needs to be so enormous? Is it really just there to keep you dry? That would be a lot of steel for nothing more than a little rain cover. And have you noticed how they're almost always the same height? Just tall enough for a semi-truck to pass underneath, or how a Shell station in Texas looks nearly identical to a BP station in Ohio. What does that roof have to do with fuel safety? And if it's so important, why did gas stations operate for decades without canopies at all? The real answer is surprising, and it has very little to do with rain. You pull in, park beneath a wide, flat roof supported by a few steel columns, pump your gas, and head back out. The canopy feels so normal it's almost invisible, like it's simply part of the station and not worth questioning. But that's exactly where most people get it wrong. Most people assume the canopy is just one simple structure with one basic purpose. It isn't. A gas station canopy is a permanently engineered overhead system designed to handle several critical functions at once: shielding against weather, managing fuel vapors, supporting lighting, providing vehicle clearance, and displaying brand signage, all within a single steel framework. That's not one job. That's 5 separate roles built into one structure. And surprisingly, protection from rain is probably the least interesting of them all. The reason people misunderstand this is simple. Weather is the only thing you immediately notice. If it's drizzling, you step out under the roof, stay dry, and your brain quickly labels it as nothing more than rain cover. The other 4 functions stay completely invisible unless something fails. But those hidden systems are working every single time you pull up to the pump. Once you understand them, you'll never look at a gas station the same way again. Let's start with the part that catches most people off guard: vapor management. Gasoline constantly evaporates. Every time a nozzle goes into a fuel tank, invisible vapors rise from the opening. In a completely open lot with no overhead structure, wind can push those vapors anywhere, toward a hot engine, toward someone standing nearby, or even toward an electrical spark caused by static discharge or another source. That's not a minor risk. The canopy helps create a controlled airflow zone above the pumps. Those small openings and edge gaps you've probably never noticed are intentionally designed to allow vapors to move upward and disperse safely outward instead of collecting near ground level. A good way to picture it is like the exhaust hood above a restaurant stove. It quietly directs unwanted fumes away before they become a problem. It doesn't trap fuel vapors underneath. It controls how they move, guiding them upward and outward in a slow, safe way. In that sense, the canopy is really a ventilation system disguised as a roof. And this is where it gets even more interesting, because once you understand that, the height suddenly makes perfect sense too. Most gas station canopies sit somewhere between 14 and 16 feet above the ground. In many places, that height is set by regulation, and it's definitely not for your sedan, which only needs around 7 feet of clearance. It's designed for the tallest vehicles that need access: fuel delivery trucks that often stand 13 to 14 feet high, large RVs, box trucks, and pickups carrying roof-mounted equipment. Think about it. A gas station with a canopy too low for its own fuel truck to enter is a station that can't refill its tanks, and a station that can't receive fuel eventually shuts down. That's why canopy height is determined by the largest vehicle that must fit underneath, not the average customer car. It's also why gas stations across the country, from Montana to Florida, tend to have canopies that look almost exactly the same height. Then there's lighting. Gas stations operate around the clock, and properly lighting an outdoor fueling area at night is harder than most people realize. It has to be bright enough for security cameras, clear enough for customers to read pump screens, and visible enough to instantly spot something like a fuel spill. Without a canopy, that would require extremely tall poles with intense floodlights, an expensive solution that still creates uneven coverage and harsh shadows. The canopy solves that problem beautifully. It works on the same principle as an office drop ceiling, or the reflector used behind professional studio lights. A flat surface close to the source spreads light smoothly, instead of creating harsh contrast. So in a way, the canopy solves the lighting problem almost automatically, just by being there. And then there's the role almost nobody thinks about, even though every fuel company invests heavily in it: branding. Those colored panels wrapping around the canopy, the red and yellow of Shell, the green of BP, the blue of Chevron, aren't just decoration. In most cities, they're legally classified as signage. That means the canopy isn't just shelter, it's also the station's billboard, logo display, and visual identifier all in one. It's what lets you recognize which station you're approaching from hundreds of yards away, long before you can read a single word on a roadside sign. The panel's size, height, colors, and placement are all tightly controlled by local sign regulations, which is why each brand's canopy looks nearly identical from one city to the next. So what looks like a simple roof is actually something far more strategic, a legally approved sign structure, carefully engineered for safety, visibility, ventilation, and function, just cleverly disguised as everyday architecture. The canopy is often the single most expensive sign a gas station owns, yet most people never even think of it as signage. But here's the twist that changes the entire story. For nearly the first 40 years of the automobile era, gas stations didn't have canopies at all. None. You'd pull up beside a pump, and an attendant in uniform would walk over, fill your tank, clean your windshield, check your oil, and collect your payment. You stayed comfortably inside the car the entire time. You never stepped out into the rain, never stood in the heat, and never needed overhead cover because the service came directly to you. That original model still technically survives today in places like Oregon and New Jersey, where attendants are still required by law in certain forms. They're essentially living relics of how fueling used to work. Then, everything changed in 1947. A station in Los Angeles introduced something completely new: self-service fueling. No attendant, lower prices. Customers pumped their own gas. People loved the savings. Lines quickly formed, and the idea spread faster than anyone expected. By the 1960s and 1970s, self-service stations had become the new standard across the country, and that shift created a problem no one had dealt with before. Suddenly, customers were standing outside by themselves, holding fuel nozzles in whatever conditions nature threw at them: rain, blazing summer heat, freezing nights, darkness. The attendant was gone, which meant someone, or rather something, had to take over those missing functions: protect the customer from weather, properly light the fueling area, and clearly display the station's brand from a distance. One steel structure solved all three. That's why the canopy wasn't added as some decorative upgrade or luxury feature. It was a practical, unavoidable response to the challenges created when self-service replaced full-service attendants. And today, with self-service accounting for more than 90% of fuel sales across the United States, that once simple solution has become one of the most recognizable pieces of roadside architecture in modern life. Every one of those transactions now happens under a canopy that exists for the same reason the attendant disappeared. And that's the part most people miss entirely. The same logic behind a gas station canopy quietly repeats itself across dozens of structures you pass through every day without noticing. Take drive-through restaurants, for example. Their overhead covers aren't just there for comfort. They handle the same core jobs: shielding customers from weather, allowing clearance for SUVs and delivery vans, supporting bright lighting for menus and security cameras, and carrying bold brand colors on fascia panels that identify the business instantly. Toll booths and highway service plazas follow the same blueprint. Their canopies keep attendants protected from the elements, illuminate each transaction lane clearly at night, and are built high enough to accommodate every type of vehicle on the road, from passenger cars to long-haul trucks. Bank drive-thrus operate on a similar principle. They're open enough for airflow and vehicle movement, but enclosed just enough overhead to keep customers dry, improve visibility, and support camera monitoring and safety lighting. Even something as simple as a parking garage ticket machine canopy follows the same rules: regulated height clearance, integrated lighting from above, and often a branded edge panel identifying the facility. Bus station drop-off areas use wide, open-sided canopies so buses can pull in safely without obstruction, while passengers step out or wait under cover, protected from rain and direct sun, with consistent lighting at night. Shopping mall loading docks are built with the same clearance logic as gas stations, because they serve the same kind of delivery trucks that need precise vertical space to operate safely. Ferry terminals extend the same concept over water, covering fueling zones and vehicle loading areas with large-scale overhead structures designed for weather protection, visibility, and safe movement, just expanded to a maritime setting. Even agricultural fuel depots in rural areas follow this pattern. They may skip branding entirely, but they still rely on overhead cover for weather protection and vapor safety during refueling operations. And finally, even the small overhang above a convenience store entrance is part of the same family of design thinking, just scaled down. It protects customers from rain, improves visibility, and signals where to enter. Different industries, different settings, but the same underlying idea repeated again and again. A simple overhead structure solving multiple problems at once. A small weather cover, a set of lights underneath, and a branded fascia panel carrying the store's logo. And now, As electric vehicle charging stations spread across the country, that same idea is evolving again. Many operators are building canopies with solar panels integrated directly into the roof. It's the same structure and the same underlying logic, but now the roof doesn't just cover the car. In some cases, it also generates the electricity that powers it. In a way, the gas station template is being rebuilt for the electric era, and the canopy is one of the few elements that carried over unchanged. But here's the part people rarely hear. Canopies are not simple or cheap structures. They're expensive to build, complex to maintain, and far more engineered than they appear. A typical installation can cost anywhere from roughly $80,000 to $200,000 before factoring in electrical systems, lighting design, or signage permits. In dense urban areas, those costs climb even higher due to stricter regulations and deeper foundation requirements. They also behave like oversized flat surfaces exposed to the elements, which means they can act like sails during strong winds. Hurricanes have destroyed entire installations. That's why in coastal regions, building codes require much heavier steel framing and reinforced structural design to handle extreme wind loads. Even durability is limited. Most canopies are designed with a lifespan of about 20 to 30 years, after which corrosion, faded branding panels, and outdated lighting systems start to require major upgrades or replacement. However, new technology is beginning to shift the equation. LED lighting has reduced long-term energy use, and solar-integrated canopies are starting to change the cost balance for some operators. In certain cases, a canopy that produces electricity can gradually offset its own construction cost over time through energy savings. So the structure isn't disappearing, but it is being reimagined, because the gas station canopy exists for a reason that goes far beyond shelter. It was created when self-service removed the attendant and suddenly introduced 5 separate problems that needed solving at once. One steel roof handled all of them. What looks like a simple overhead cover is actually a vapor management system, a regulated clearance marker, a lighting platform, a legal advertising surface, and a physical reminder of a moment when fueling stopped being a service and became something you do yourself.